For this last part of the unit, we're going to be looking at some cells that look a little bit different than what we've been studying. So we've been studying very complex cells that have nucleuses and rough ER and mitochondria and all these different organelles. But there are some cells that lack all of these more advanced structures, and that's going to be our bacteria cells. So we're actually going to go down to the bottom here, and we're going to summarize what are some of the biggest difference between our cells and bacteria cells. So bacteria cells they're called prokaryotic. Now if you know some prefixes, pro means before and kary means nucleus. So bacteria cells are basically cells that don't have a nucleus. They came about, they evolved before cells even have a nucleus. And so to this day, they do not have a nucleus. So they do have DNA, but their DNA is not enclosed in a membrane. So there's no true nucleus. Now as for their DNA, it looks a little bit different than ours. They have one chromosome. We have 46. But their chromosome is circular. So their DNA looks a little bit different than our cells. Now, we also aren't going to see any of these membrane-bound organelles. We're not going to see chloroplasts inside of bacteria cells or rough ER or smooth ER. So we say that they lack or they have no membrane-bound organelles. Another difference is that we usually see bigger cells like our white blood cells engulfing bacteria, and they're much smaller. You think about it, they are going to be much smaller because they don't have a lot of stuff inside of them. And we also will see that all bacteria cells just live on their own. They're just one cell big. So we say that they're single cell, or we can say that they are unicellular organisms. Okay. Now, bacteria are prokaryotic. You and all other things. So it's not just us. So you are, and everything else on this planet except bacteria are made of eukaryotic cells. It's just spelled a little bit different. So this is eukaryotic. So if you have a eukaryotic cell, you should see a nucleus. You're going to see lots of organelles inside. So rough ER, Golgi, mitochondria, or chloroplast. They are much bigger cells. There needs to be room for all those cell parts inside, and they usually are part of a multicellular organism. Now, there are some eukaryotic cells that are just single cell, but the majority of eukaryotic cells are going to be a part of a multicellular organism. So let's take a look at some pictures here. We've got prokaryotic on this side. So prokaryotic bacteria. Very simple. Small, much smaller than what this diagram is showing us, but they have their own DNA. It's not in the cytoplasm. Plus it's circular. So this looks like a long string, but it's not just a straight string. This is a circular piece of DNA. Now something else, since we've learned that DNA codes for proteins, bacteria better have the cell parts that can build the proteins. So the only organelle that they have is ribosomes. We learned in the past that ribosomes, they're not made of a membrane. So that's why we say that bacteria have no membrane-bound organelles. They do have an organelle. The only one they have, though, is ribosomes, but it's not membrane-bound. Okay? So make sure you can tell me some similarities, some structures that all cells have. All cells have DNA. All cells have a cell membrane. All cells have cytoplasm and ribosomes. But also be ready to tell me some differences between your prokaryotes and your eukaryotes. Here's your eukaryotic cells over here. Okay, you and everything else are eukaryotic cells.